Evening, everyone. Hey, Melissa, can you also give me screen share ability?
Yep.
Thank you.
All right, I'm going to call the meeting to order, 7:01. Doesn't look like we have anybody from the public. Oh, that's Julie. NIWI event. So I guess we can't approve the minutes because we don't have a quorum, right?
But you could table it to the end of the meeting to see if more folks come, Melissa. You can do it at any time. You can take it out of order.
It looks like there's, how many people do we need?
We have a quorum if everyone votes.
All right. So looking to approve the minutes from February.
I motion for the approval of version 2 of the February minutes.
I'll second it.
All right. Robin,
Yes.
Tom,
Yes.
Julie,
Yes.
Chris,
Yes.
Sean,
Aye.
Anne,
Yes.
Tiana. I think she's having some difficulties, maybe. Tiana, are you there? Okay, I think that's probably enough, right? Six. I'm a yes. We good, Robin? Okay. Minutes approved. So let me share the agenda. So next item is talking about the open seats that we have on the committee. So the terms are April to April. So looks like Myra's not here, but she is going to be vacating her term 1 year early. so that we have one seat that'll fulfill her last year of her term. And then we have 2 seats, because Sean's going to be leaving us. We have 2 seats open for another 3-year term. So we did get actually 3 applicants. So we have 3 seats, so we have 3 applicants, so it works out. One of the applicants actually suggested that she should fulfill the 1-year term just to see if it's a good fit. And then Dan has reapplied, and then we have 1 other applicant that would be for the 3-year term. So I don't know if we want to, you want me to send around those resumes, or if we could just kind of approve the 3 applicants for the 3 seats. Any thoughts?
I wouldn't want to approve or make any comments on an applicant without having seen their application.
Okay. I can send those around. And then we can, I guess, vote at the next meeting. Does that work?
I don't think we voted. I think we sort of just made this the comment to the select board, some thoughts. It was definitely informal because we don't have, Julie, correct me if I'm wrong, but we don't tend
Yeah,
to.
so I mean, you can, I think we can vote, but in the end, it's the town council who makes the decision. So you can just say, you know, these are the candidates that we think will do well. And if there's not much competition, you can put all 3 of them. And you can suggest, you can also make the suggestions on the terms. And we're going to be very likely to take your suggestions because we tend to defer to the committees who know best what they need.
Melissa, is the or Julie, is the application period closed?
Yeah.
Okay.
When was it advertised?
Yeah,
don't remember.
I have to say I completely missed it too. So I'm not.
It was advertised in January, I think, and the deadline was like end of February or mid-February, something like that.
Yeah, this is the annual one. So usually things come to town council when we advertise, but I think this is the annual one that's just on a regular schedule. So it doesn't surprise me.
I think there was a town announcement.
Yeah, I'm sure they announced it. I just don't think they had to come to town council to advertise because it's an annual kind of perfunctory thing. I'm sorry to hear of the ones who are not rejoining us, though.
Yeah, sorry to see Sean go.
Very sorry, Sean and Myra, and very sorry to see you guys go. But I'm sure you'll stay involved. Now we know how to find you.
Yeah, and I know I'm still on the OSRC as ESC rep through the end of that process. But yeah,
I hope you'll remain on there because I think you have a lot of good knowledge. So
yeah,
I'll
I'll
invite
see
you
that.
back to share with us anytime.
I'll see that through, and I may stay involved in a subcommittee. I just need to make sure I'm not overcommitting to things that I can't do with full energy. But
I respect that.
That's all of it, beginning and end. No complaints, and would love to keep being involved.
Great, thanks. Okay, so I'll send around the applications, and if you could just reply to me on any comments you have, and we'll go from there. Next item is talk about Earth Day, which is the end of April. So I wanted to start discussing anything we want to get planning. We do have the recycling and sustainability event that Leopard Garabedian is hosting on April 9th, I believe. April 8th at the high school, same as last year. So we're planning on maybe doing a toy swap there. We're also going to be inviting this group called London Men from Melrose to do kind of a fix-it clinic type of thing. So we're working with them to kind of set the rules on that, because we don't want just people bringing a ton of broken stuff and expecting it to get fixed. So we're working out the details there, but yeah, because we didn't want to kind of do the same thing as last year. Let's try and think of other options. So a toy swap came up. So we're thinking of kind of limiting it to like 2 or 3 toys max, and then anything that's left over we would donate. So, but if there's other things that we want to do besides that event, open for discussion.
Is the town or students doing any litter cleanup in April?
I don't know if the Warrior Crew, I'm assuming they are, but I don't know.
Or student members have any insight?
I have not received any notification about the events, but I'm not closely tied with the Warrior Crew, so.
Yeah, same with me.
Okay, I can try to find contact there just to ask. Robin, you had some ideas.
Do I need, I actually don't remember what I wrote completely. Do you have that list, or do I need to pick it up?
Something
Hold on, I
about
can-
native planting.
Yeah, I mean, so in general, this is the time of year people think about gardening, and so, education about the value of native plants, whether it's trees versus, flower pots or whatever. But I didn't necessarily have anyone in mind that would be able to speak to it at a level that, people would see as valuable. Oh, and the other one was the either hosting an event or get out the word of invasives, thinking of bittersweet. And in the spring actually is the best time to take care of something called garlic mustard. It's one of the biggest challenges that in the spring, it's a early plants that has lovely white flowers, so people don't realize just how quickly it is spreading on the undergrowth of along roads and so forth. But you can eat it. Makes apparently very lovely pesto, but it is something that we need to be mindful and promote the removal of it, because it is not, it doesn't play nicely with our natives.
Can also brew it.
That I've never heard, Tom, but okay.
There is a brewery up in Vermont that makes a really good garlic mustard saison with it.
I'll take your word for it.
But yeah, but yeah, when picking it, right, it easily pulls up by the root, and the guidance is to actually just throw it away, bag it in
Yes.
a plastic bag and dispose of it, because it is so invasive.
Yes,
and another
never
one-
compost, never.
Yep. And the other one is
It can go in yard waste.
No, you're spreading the seeds.
Oh,
You want it, even if you dry it, you shouldn't put it into a compost. It needs to be burned or put in the trash, which of course then burns it.
and
So,
the Japanese
what do they do with the
bamboo.
yard waste?
What's that?
They don't compost the yard waste,
Sure they do.
do they?
That all goes to the pit. It's a big compost pile.
And what do they do?
Yes, we don't want it at the pit. We're
Okay.
gonna make compost, so we don't wanna have it. in-
Where does your compost go?
So some gets, people from Wakefield can get
Yeah.
it when it's out there, and other times we use it for fill, we'll use it at the cemetery. Last year we got a screener, and so we can make all these products up there, and one of them including compost.
Oh, that's good to know.
So, Anne, actually, maybe you're the person to ask. So, I see Oriental bittersweet growing up trees on public property. I know that it is a problem if I went in there and cut them, even though I know what I'm doing. Because it's cutting, public property and so forth without supervision. So what would be the process to be able to get permission to host some people with loppers? I mean, I've participated in an Audubon invasive day, I guess they call it, where they actually bring in someone who has is a landscaper that has permission, has the bucket of not insecticide, the plant poison, so you can dab the end of the roots when you
Yep.
when you lop it. But just cutting it and unstrangling trees is such a big benefit to the trees, even if you can't spray it.
Yeah, so if will you shoot me an email when you have a second,
Uh-huh.
then I'll run it through Dennis, and I'm sure you seem pretty
I'm a little
reliable.
passionate about killing things, which sounds really weird because I'm also passionate about growing things, but there's some that are
Yeah, and we'll get you set up.
okay.
Thanks.
I find
So-
joy in pulling weeds.
Yeah, no, the garlic mustard is a super easy one to pick up. It doesn't require any tools. It pulls out really easily. Tatiana, maybe something we could talk about the secondary benefits of pulling it out, such as the recipes of pesto, and see if someone in town wants to brew it. It could be kind of a fun
Yeah, absolutely.
way
If there's, any write-ups on it, or, how to identify it so that you're pulling the right thing, any of that you have, we can absolutely blast around a bunch of that closer to Earth Day, for sure.
Yeah, I think hosting invasive pulling event would be kind of a fun thing to do in town that I don't think has been done. Besides, I know there's DCR stuff, but that's at the Braycard and DCR properties.
I mean, I haven't done a formal survey, but I'm sure that every edge of a park in town has a garlic mustard, just because it thrives on edges and then goes in from there. So if you ever drive to Oak Grove in April, that driveway is just all little white flowers, and that's all garlic mustard. So, okay, I'll share some.
Yeah, if you want to maybe look into putting something together, that'd be a fun thing to do. Obviously, we need to get permission from DPW. Any other thoughts on Earth Day events or education that we can, blast out, or anything else?
You had said for the schools that are doing the compost and food rescue that we should promote more or share more about that. Be a couple months in, we can share some stats, maybe make a infographic or something explaining about it that can go home to families. I think that was in our plan for WEF, so
Yeah,
we'll pull something together.
yeah, I saw that email about the WCAT too. So seems like they kind of want to do something elaborate, but
I'm sure we can pull back and make it less elaborate.
okay. Yeah, we should talk about that. Well, if there's anything else that you can think of, definitely email the group. And if anybody is available on April 8th to help out with the recycling and sustainability event at the high school, let me know. The more the merrier. Okay. Next item is discussing ESC sponsorship of specialized opt-in stretch code. This is being led by Tom and Julie.
Thanks. Let's see here. Can I share?
Yep.
Share. Share screen. All right. Is everyone
Yes.
in presenter mode? So it's bigger. Is that good for everyone?
Yep.
All right. So this would be the specialized opt-in stretch code. And this is a sample town warrant article and motion. We would be, the motion or the vote tonight would be for us to bring forth our recommendation and ask for the town council to sponsor this as a warrant item article on for the spring town meeting. And the Department of Energy has asked for kind of consistency across. So their recommendation is to, upon adoption, to delay the enforcement or enactment or effective date, and you can see here, by 6 months, and then for uniformity across the state to enact it either on January 1st or July 1st. Whichever is 6 months or longer. So for us being town meeting in May, that would be a January 1st, 2024 effective date. I would recommend that we take action on this now, and have that 6 months and get this enacted for January 1st, 2024. As you know, there are a lot of projects coming to Wakefield, and we want to get this in place. As a reminder of what the stretch code is and the specialized code. So today, being a green community, we adopted the stretch code last year, and we've been now part of green communities, but we have the stretch code. Those stretch codes promulgated on January 1st of this year. So all of the new stuff we already have now in our code base because we're a stretch code community. We are looking, the specialized code brings us to bucket number 3. As you can see, is appends the specialized code into our code base. Any questions there? I know we've reviewed this, so I'll go through this quickly before. And then, as you can see, just builds upon the stretch code. Why are what is the specialized stretch code for? It is really to help. It was put in place to enable communities to meet the state's 2050 net zero goals. And it's really the tools they are providing us as a community to help us achieve those goals, and to limit the greenhouse gas emissions, which a lot of that comes from our infrastructure in place. So buildings are a big component of that. And so this is just the kind of, again, reiterating, we're in the middle there with the updated stretch code. We're looking to get to the right on the specialized code. It does require that adoption, and it would bring us in consistent with the mass greenhouse gas limits and targets that have been put in place. As a reminder, what is this what does the specialized code do? This is for residential. Essentially for residential, if a building is designed and built as all electric, no additional requirements are required because it's compliant within the net zero in 2050. If a fossil fuel is used in the building, then it is required that that building have PV installed and be pre-wired for electrification. That's heating, drying, cooking, so on and so forth. And this is kind of high level. And this is the pathways that the specialized code allows for residential building, the all electric, the fossil fuel, or the passive house. For commercial requirements, it's really the same as a stretch code. The additional requirements are EV ready wiring, and the fossil fuel path requires the PV as well and pre-wiring for future electrification. And these are kind of the multiple paths for the different commercial building types, large multifamily and all of the commercial buildings. Any questions or anything that was?
So I guess the main difference between the specialized and the opt-in is that it's codified. Is that it?
So we have the stretch code today. Essentially, the specialized code for residential, the big part in the residential is providing the pathway for if a fossil fuel is utilized in the building, then there is the requirement of PV to be installed and the building be pre-wired. It also has a lower HERS rating that they have to, that building has to achieve. So it's more of, they're requiring that building to be more efficient from a HERS perspective. And then it's kind of the same with commercial buildings as well. And so this is kind of the road mapping that the Department of Energy is providing us to get us to net zero. So the net really is they're driving buildings to be all electric or all electric ready if a fossil fuel is picked with PV, and then putting it on the utilities to bring our grid down, decarbonize the grid and get the grid to net zero. So if a building is all electric, as the grid gets more decarbonizes, that building follows it as well.
And Tom, you want to talk, I mean, this is new construction you have up here, but there's also.
So renovations actually get pulled into the stretch code. So the renovations are already being
Okay. I knew that's what we talked about. Okay.
Yeah.
I think that's important.
Correct. So renovations already are applicable, and there are certain thresholds within the new stretch code, but those are already in place for us because we have the stretch code. The specialized code essentially makes ready all new construction for electrification if a fossil fuel is utilized in that building.
So it doesn't include renovations?
Well, the renovations are already captured in the stretch code.
Okay.
So we're already capturing the renovations.
Okay.
So as you can see here, we're in bucket 2 here. So renovations are captured here. Once this doesn't go away. So what we're adding to this, right? So we fall under the IECC 2021 with the Massachusetts amendment, the stretch codes, and then this adds in the specialized code as well. So this builds upon these, the regular energy code, the stretch code, and now the specialized code builds on top of it. So you have to meet all of the things that are in the stretch code. You would have the additional meeting of the opt-in code, which fundamentally is if you pick a fossil fuel, you have to achieve a better HERS rating, and you have to install solar on your building and make the building electric ready.
Do we have any information on costs that are associated with each codes? Like how much more costs gonna
So
incur?
the Department of Energy has done some stuff, and in some cases it's actually a little bit more, potentially even a bit less. Let's see if I can bring this up.
Because I think that would be important that, they're going to be asking a town meeting, I'm sure.
Just looking for this chart here. So this is kind of what, on a commercial side.
Tom, we're not seeing a new screen.
Oh. Hold on. I wasn't sharing the screen. How's that?
Yeah.
So, right, this is what the Department of Energy, they ran a bunch of different scenarios based on this, and the, incremental cost to build, right? A primary school, 1 to almost 3%. But the greenhouse gas reduction is, can be almost up to 40%. There are some cases in, large office buildings, building to the stretch code actually costs less in that aspect. Same with lab and office. So the incremental adds are not a lot with the reduction of greenhouse gas, and then the efficiencies are will pay for these incremental adds to the construction costs pretty quickly.
So what about the difference between the stretch code we're at now versus the specialized? Is there like an increase in cost, decrease?
So this particular slide, to my understanding, was with running with the specialized code.
Oh, okay.
I haven't seen anything between the stretch code and the specialized code.
Okay.
And in Wakefield, at least from a heating standpoint, right? Any large commercial or multifamilies, you can't get a gas hookup anymore.
It's multifamily, not large. So right now the moratorium is on multifamily at the moment.
It's only a multifamily. Okay.
Correct. Yep. And what part of this is looking to codify the making buildings more efficient and making them ready for net zero, and the beneficial electrification.
Yeah.
So I am in support of the specialized in the spirit of it. My concern of the timing of us asking to go ahead. So this is brand new. I mean, just us being a stretch code community is new to developers and residents. It's the details that haven't been vetted in real life that, so conceptually these kinds of things totally clear. My concern is that even when the stretch code first existed, there were a few bumps and they had to make some adjustments. And I think I'd rather the 4 communities that have done this to have them at least have 6 months with it, so we can work out some details, provide more training from a builder, designer, engineer, inspector, and then us get on it. So it seems it's a little too aggressive for me, but I love what it's doing. It's just the details of compliance with it. I'm worried and have concerns.
Robin, is that even with the effective date of January 1st of 2024, which is nine months from now?
Yeah, because so they, having voted, well, 2 community voted in January, and I just saw another 2 names appear. So I think they February, they can't be using it yet, right? So it's not truly tested because their effective date is July.
Yeah.
So it's what happens after July. So I'm more interested in the fall after a few months of it being out there, and then us having it, and then us asking for it is something I just feel a little more comfortable because of a little bit of the history of how all those regulations went through, and things that I'm hearing. Everyone loves the spirit of it. It's like the logistics of getting there that I worry about. I mean, I want us to be successful at it, and I don't want us to have criticism if it's a little bumpy. Because
potentially, so it would bringing forth this with a, say, July 1st of 2024. That way, we're giving enough notice that we're gonna put, we've adopted this. You have more than a year and a half to get your projects ready, that it's coming for July 1st of 2024. And that way we have this, there's nothing that says that we can't adopt this now and put the effective date, further than the 6 months plus. We can say we want this on July 1st of 2024.
I mean, that is a good point, because then 6 months is not a lot of time if someone's in a process to have kind of this new regulation and having to make, some adjustments. A year does mean that people, they're less surprised. I have not had a chance, Julie, thank you for the email to the building inspector. I did not have a chance to call him, so.
I think he's been out anyway, so we've reached, so don't worry.
Well,
It's all on you.
I still didn't do
But
my
we
part.
we do need to talk to him for sure.
Yeah. Just to,
Yeah,
but
I
yes, a year out, I do feel much more comfortable, because in fact, I heard something else of concerns that the inspectors feel like they're not prepared for any of this. So, that extra 6 months to be able to have the state give them their test or the training, because, what's the point of the rule if it's not enforced, right? We want it to be successful.
Agreed. And I'm totally fine. I'd actually think that potentially is better, because it signals that, we're moving in that direction, and, it won't be a surprise or a short runway for anyone. That, we adopt it this spring, and its effective is July 1st, 2024.
I like that idea.
Yeah. Question, in terms of other towns that are doing this, I see, Brookline and Watertown. So for those towns, it's already promulgated, or the code is in effect. Do we know of other towns that have sort of done what we're talking about doing, which is moving to adopt it, but having a further out, effective date?
So I don't, let's see here, I think the folks that adopted it, so I think Brookline and Watertown are July 1st, and I think the other two are actually January of 24. So the Department of Energy has asked for the adoption to be, when you adopt it, to give at least, you can see right here, six months in there. And then for consistency to either have, whichever is further out or past 6 months for July 1st or January 1st. And then even within the code itself, there are some timers as well. So even with there may even be into past July 1st of 2024. There are certain parts, especially in the commercial code, that says, while this is adopted, this part of the code does not go into effect until this, point in time in 2024.
So the Brookline and Watertown, they've adopted it, but it doesn't go into effect for them until July.
July 1st. Both of them. I know Brookline and Watertown are both July 1st of
Right. Yeah.
2023.
They voted, I think, on those 2nd of January or something.
Yes.
Tom, I'm trying to look at on that website I sent you the other day. What are they calling it? The folks that are able to test a fossil fuel free community. Do you remember how long their study lasts?
I don't remember what their studies are in terms of how long that
Yeah.
they're running them for.
And Tommy
That
said
website
there's
doesn't
others
say.
that have
Remember
adopted.
the other thing too is the moratorium on the multifamilies for natural gas is in place for the protection of peaking, right? So there are constraints, and it's to protect the gas system from oversubscription. And that was one of the ways that we have the the gas and light had the lever to do that.
So do you know what the timing is for, so it would be when the buildings pull the permit, basically, that they would have to abide by the new code?
Yeah,
That
it's
is
a
what
s-
I understand.
Yeah,
it's when the yes, but the inspector has some discretion on kind of the definition of when you first start you pull your permit process. As with anything, they have a lot of discretionary powers on things.
okay.
Why are you concerned of?
No, I'm just like thinking about like kind of the new construction, big new construction projects in town, like they would be impacted by this or not.
Oh, I found the other, so it's Wellesley and Arlington. Just need to look at.
And I would be shocked if after the Lexington town meeting they are on that list.
I think Cambridge is on it too, aren't they?
Well, Cambridge is on that the
Oh, they're on the fossil free.
prioritized community. So they were
Yeah.
one of the 10. So that them, Brookline, Newton, are on that different legislative categorization.
Okay,
And 2 things on the Nantucket, it looks like.
yeah. I mean, I'm torn. I definitely hear what you say, Robin. I also just feel like there's a lot of development in town, and I mean, I'm fine with a year runway. But it almost seems more fair to signal that this is coming than to maybe wait until the fall and then only give 6 months. I don't know. Town meeting's gonna be pretty long, and this is the spring town meeting is budget town meeting. So not that that matters, but I don't know. We just have to figure out who can come out. But this really goes back to what we were talking about almost a year ago. This really makes it PV ready and EV ready, right, Tom? I mean, that's essentially, this is what we've
Correct.
been waiting for. We decided to wait for this when we talked about this a year ago.
Yep, and a lot of those things were brought into the stretch code that we now have, but all of those are ready. It's really the specialized codes that when you choose a fossil fuel path that you actually have to have installed versus ready, which is in the stretch code. Ready is in everything. So even if you go specialized and you're an all electric building, you still can be PV ready. It's the requirement to install PV is when you choose the fossil fuel path. And economics, right? Economics would drive, if you have an all electric building, more than likely you're going to install PV. But
Right. You don't have to.
Correct.
I mean, just some of the background, not background on this, but just, we're going through this 40A process where the state is requiring MBTA communities to rezone certain areas and as multifamilies, which is going to be, I think we're going to see a lot more construction coming up. I don't think we have to actually submit our plan until the end of 2024. We haven't even started meeting on it yet. So
There's
it's not
something
like-
due this year because the meetings are supposed to be from April to August.
So I think it is due. I think our plan is due at the end of this year. So our preliminary plan saying we want, yes, we're going to work towards this was accepted at the end of last year. And then we're putting a committee together, right? And we're meeting until August to submit for this year. And so construction under 40A, I guess, could start in theory as soon as 2025. 2024, sorry, I'm a year ahead. As soon as 2024.
Well, no, you have to have a plan and then we'd have to go to town meeting to get the
We'd
zoning
have to do
approved.
for the rezoning. I don't
So
know, but they
it's-
don't know
it's-
what happens if the town doesn't rezone, right? It's a state rule, but the town has to. I guess you just lose your funding opportunities. So yes, there's probably a little more time in there. I'm just trying to think how this would line up with that. Because that's where I think we're gonna start to see, it only has to be zoned for as right development, doesn't mean that the development's gonna happen. But it will make development of multifamilies easier to happen. And so we're probably gonna be coming up in that in 24, 25. And I think if we were having 2 to 6 families, it'd be nice to have them under the stretch code. Under the opt-in stretch code.
I guess another thought of not asking it for April is that as a community, I think it's a concept that people don't know. And, this is last month we talked about the stretch code, but we didn't talk about necessarily our proceeding with anything on this. So I kind of feel like you have to have an opportunity for more public to talk about it than them only hearing it at town meeting. To avoid some misinformation or anything, like I think we kind of have to have a special opportunity for it potentially, because it's kind of may surprise folks of like the new fossil fuels or the burden of prepping for 2 systems, which is crazy, just go electric, but
Have other towns done any like public forums on it or like talk to the community? Have you heard?
It looks like Arlington did one last week.
There
I
are
haven't
a
seen the recording.
few recordings and stuff out there. I actually just found this FAQ on the differences between the stretch code, which we have, and the opt-in code. And I want to say like really number 7 is kind of the big differences.
And we should maybe put some of this stuff up on our website so people can start educating themselves on it. Tiana, we can do it, some of it through. I think either way, we go to town meeting at the end of March and say, this is something we're looking at.
town meeting, you mean town
Not
council?
sorry, not town meeting, town council.
Yeah.
I mean, I again, in March or April is probably the right time for us to go to town council and report on all the things that we've been doing.
Well, that is
And maybe-
a bigger audience, at least than
Right.
eventually gets picked up by the item a little bit. So there is the people start to ask questions and we can address
Right.
concerns.
Right. It kind of throws it out there that this is something that's being thought about.
Yeah.
So I definitely, whatever we decide today, I think we do a presentation to town council whenever we go to them, whether it's the end of March or early April. And we say that, this is something we're looking seriously at.
Yeah,
I
I
think we
mean,
need to do
I
that.
would say because it's just new construction, there isn't a large burden on, the town folks. Is not part of renovations. And it really, number 8 here is the pre-wiring is it's much easier to do that during new construction and not putting that burden on the building owner in the future if any sort of regulation comes down that they have to move to all electric or they want to. So it's as you know, it's pennies on the dollar during construction versus retrofit after the fact.
Also, in terms of how the specialized opt-in code was developed, wasn't it being done sort of alongside the current new stretch code? So it's not like it sort of came up new. I mean, this has been sort of out there and it's been part of the process alongside the stretch code that is now what we're subject to anyway, right?
Correct.
I would say yes, but at a state level, so it feels remote and removed from kind of, it would impact a person or something smaller, you know? Because there was a lot of talk for a while and things changed, so like people, I think only folks that cared in the positive would tune into the nuance of it.
Well, have like builders and other like folks who this would directly impact, have they been involved along the path? Because I imagine that a lot of builders of new construction aren't necessarily specific to a town,
Correct.
right? So I imagine that the folks who are deeply and immediately impacted care about all of the towns voting for it or not, and probably have been keeping an eye on it already. Because I think, yeah, to Tom's point, if it's not about renovations, then you know, any of us who are already living in a home here aren't immediately impacted. So this almost feels like a who's really gonna care? Like everyone's gonna get riled up about it, but who actually like it feels impacted and cares?
To answer your question, if they would have been involved in the writing of it, I don't know the answer to that. My gut is that some developers would have paid attention to when there's public hearings, but I don't think they necessarily were the author, you know, sitting at the table with them, those who wrote it.
Right, so, you know, to your point, Tiana, like the people that are coming to town meeting are not gonna be impacted by this. Unless there's like developers there, but they have to be living in town.
Be a small minority of the people at town meeting.
And that I would, advocate that this, the stretch code, because it is new building, we do have new developments, being planned, being thought about, really helps all of us in town and, reducing that carbon footprint, reducing the demand on the gas side, which we know, in New England is constrained. Where the electric side, we're just more robust at, and even if this past winter, I don't know if those of you that heat with natural gas, it's been really volatile. While the electric side has gone up, it just has not been that as volatile as the actual fossil fuel. So it's been, they have gone up, but they've been more gradual and stable versus the natural gas has been very, very volatile this winter.
Tom or Julie, did you guys draft a motion that for us to consider? I mean, you talked about kind of what your thought is, but what can you repeat what the ask is of us tonight?
I mean, I think the ask would be, motion to present to town council that they put forth this optimized stretch code language, and we could take it from that first language that the state has in the town meeting, at the upcoming town meeting.
Is this sample language is from the state? Like this is
from the state.
If you're gonna do this, here's a
Right.
here's a template.
Correct,
was-
right.
yeah, so-
I just took a snippet of it, but the web page where this came from, it's from their page. There's more to it, but this is the kind of sample that the state put together to adopt this. And so obviously,
I think we'd have to put a presentation together for the town council, but I think that the motion would be that the ESC, would like
Bring
the town
forth our
council to
recommendation.
sponsor an article to adopt the stretch code. I think that's probably what it is. And they might say no, in which case the ESC could always do it on our own. We'd probably have to meet again before April 7th, but or based on that discussion, they might want to postpone it. You know, they'll probably have some similar questions that we've had here. I think they're all good questions.
I guess as the motion was said, I'm open for someone else to get their thoughts on it. So if it's us to ask them for their thoughts and through the town council, have them have a public, a participation opportunity for people, then, I'm okay with that.
And Robin, the thought process of us, making the recommendation to town council to, bring this forward as a warrant article is because it's the same methodology that we adopted the stretch code is the ESC made the recommendation to town council to adopt the stretch code. The town council then voted to bring that warrant article and sponsor the warrant article.
Got it.
Okay, Julie, did you?
Technical,
Sorry, go ahead.
I have a technical question. If it were to move forward as a warrant at the May meeting and not pass, does anything prohibit us from bringing it back again? Maybe with some revisions or just as is to the November meeting?
I don't believe so.
I'm just curious if there's you get one shot at something.
In fact, we could go out and it could get on the warrant, it could get on and if we were getting a lot of questions or we felt it wasn't understood, we could pull it right up until the minute of the vote, honestly.
Which is what we did during COVID for either plastic or styrofoam or both of them, that felt it wasn't the right time, right? So weren't they removed?
I think we just moved the date out on them, but that's how the plastic bag originally went through. It was brought. There were some valid concerns on the floor. And so instead of voting and having it go down, it was tabled. Or you could just go in and you can just tell the moderator that we've decided we don't want to talk about this today. So it's really no harm putting it on there. Things get pulled all the time.
Any other questions? Okay, Julie, did you make an official motion?
So I'll make,
before?
yeah, so I'll get, I guess as a counselor, I can do that, but yeah, I make a motion that the Environmental Sustainability Committee discuss and recommend with the town council their sponsorship of a warrant to opt into the specialized energy code.
But do you want to put it the effective date?
Yeah, we can do that. I mean, or we can talk to them about the date.
Okay.
Yeah, so let's put it on out there, effective July 2024.
I'll second it.
All right. So Robin?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
Chris?
Yes.
Tiana?
Yes.
Julie?
Yes.
Dan?
Yes.
Anne?
Yes.
Sean?
Sean, you're muted.
Yes.
I'm a yes, it passes. All right, thank you very much.
And
So
you
I
send
guess,
that around, Tom, so that we can, particularly the link to the full warrant, sample warrant.
Yes, I will send everything to Melissa to disseminate to everyone else.
Yeah, so as far as next steps, Julie, what is the timing for presentation?
Yeah, so if it's for this town meeting, the warrants have to be in by April 7th. So what I would suggest, and I can help, is that we get on the March 27th town council meeting. I don't think we'll be ready for Monday, and actually I'm not gonna be at the council meeting on Monday anyway. So I think that we present, and I would say that not just on this, Melissa, I don't know whether you're up for it, but maybe like a quick overview of all the things we're doing, and then kind of as the introduction, and then segue into this particular topic.
We might want to talk about the recycling stuff too.
Yes.
If we're ready.
Yeah, I mean, I think just you letting them know kind of what's on our radar, even if we're
Yeah,
not
I
ready to
mean,
say these are the
we
things we're
wouldn't have
looking
to-
at.
We wouldn't have to bring that to town council if we're presenting it ourselves.
Would love their input anyway.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think the more you can make them kind of informed, the better spokespeople they'll be.
okay,
So, yeah, so I'll make sure that Maureen knows that we want to be on the agenda on March 27th.
all right. It's a Monday, okay. Yeah, so I guess, Tom, do you want to put together a presentation for that, or how do you want to?
Sure, yeah, I mean, I think we can, Julie, do we need to go, how in depth do we need to go? Do we need to kind of educate on the stretch code and then what the specialized code in, or do you think, kind of
Listen, I think that we're already in the stretch code. I like there's this bucket, there's this bucket's where we are, and we want to celebrate that, and we want the council to feel good about where we are. Something out of the outside. But then, yeah, I do think we want to educate on the stretch code, and I do agree that, new construction is a big part of that theme. And then what the goals of it are. I don't think it has to be super long.
do you think, I mean, do we think we just talk to the kind of the presentation that we have, and then just add a little bit more of the collateral,
Yeah.
like that FAQ?
Yes, I do. I also think we need to talk to the building inspector, because I think they're going to really look to the building inspector. Remember, with the stretch code, people really, once they kind of realized he was on board, it was not a game changer, but it was definitely a comfort. And I will say, I'm out of town starting Monday through the 23rd, so I'm not going to be around a lot to help, but I can help that weekend before, Tom, if you can get it started.
Okay, yeah, I mean, we have most of the collateral, right?
Okay.
All right, sounds good. So next is updates from the subcommittees. So first is waste reduction. So as mentioned before, we are working on a bylaw for making it so multifamily buildings have to provide recycling. So we're kind of looking at other town regulations and bylaws and what the Mass DEP has as far as guidance for that. Tiana's been doing a lot of the digging and researching and putting things together and talking to Tom Mullen and making sure we are doing the right thing. So we're shooting to present it at town meeting. So we're hoping that we can get it put together in time. And Tiana, you want to add anything?
Sure. Yeah. From what we've learned just very recently in the last few days from Mass DEP, it seems like there's sort of a two-prong approach. There's regulations of the private haulers. So the trash and recycling companies that take and transport folks' waste, that might be through the Board of Health that we would implement that. I don't know if that part itself needs to go through town meeting or if that can be done independently through the Board of Health. So we need to talk with them and Tom and figure out how that works. But then part of that would be a bylaw about mandatory recycling. And that's actually written in there. There's some sort of sample language in the Mass DEP template about the hauler regulations. They suggest having a mandatory recycling ordinance or bylaw as part of that. So I think at the very least, we would want that part to go to town meeting if that's what's required to get it on the books. So we're still trying to understand the delta between where we are and what is needed and who needs to enact that. I have some sample language in the works, but at this point, timing wise, if we want to submit it by April 7th, and I think we would want it to come as ESC presenting it rather than, me or Melissa as a private citizen. We would need to bring that language to a special, like have a separate meeting of the ESC to review and vote on that, because it's not in a spot for us to do that tonight. So if we think we can get it in this town meeting, we would need to have a separate time to do that.
Julie, what's the date of town meeting? I know it's not officially scheduled, I don't think, but what is
No, it
the-
is. It's May, I think it's May 15th. I just have it open. Let's see.
Oh, right, it's a Monday. I was looking on
It's a
Saturdays.
Monday, yeah, it's May 15th, and everything has to be in by Friday, April 7th at noon.
Yeah, so depending on whether we need to go through the Board of Health or through a town bylaw, we would have to have a special ESC meeting, probably end of March, to vote on bringing this forward, if we're going that way. So, yeah, I guess more to come on that as we find out more which way we want to go.
From an open meeting perspective, could I send the proposed bylaw wording to this group ahead of time over
Yes.
email, as long as nobody replies all back
Yep,
about it?
Yep, just like I do my meeting minutes. Everything can be
Okay.
one directional.
Great.
You can share things, they just can't collectively comment back.
You just
And
can't,
you,
you
like-
can reply to one person, but you can't reply
Any
all.
individual can reply and say, Tiana, I don't like this particular sentence, could we
Yes.
change it, but just not as a collective. Okay.
Oh,
Yeah, it's
reply.
actually, you can't exceed the quorum, but like just assume it's
Yeah,
one reply.
Yep, okay, perfect, sounds good. Yeah, then I'll, as we get a little bit more clarity between now and a potential late March meeting of this group, I'll certainly send it around and get feedback so that we're not, I don't want to do a, group edit in a meeting.
Yep.
Cool.
Yeah, and other than that, we're just planning for the April event. We went over to the Loop in Melrose, which is a really cool space that they're doing bike repair, they're doing toy lending, they're doing zero waste products. So it's a really interesting space that has a lot of sustainability aspects. And they're going to be kicked out of their space in Melrose, and we're trying to get them to move to Wakefield. So we may bring it up to Aaron or somebody else to see if we can find a spot in town for them, because I think it'd be awesome to.
They're getting knowing, like they took that space knowing there was a 9-month window before the building is torn down. So they aren't being kicked out because they're terrible tenants. They went to that space knowing it was short term, but it does potentially give us the opportunity to woo them up to Wakefield.
That's awesome.
Wouldn't that be cool? And they're looking also to incubate other sustainability related initiatives and startups and things like that. So it could be a really cool, placemaking of the work we're doing.
Business incubator type thing, yeah.
Wouldn't that be neat? And some of, one of the empty storefronts in town.
Yeah, I was gonna ping Aaron and see if we can work some magic. But anything else, Tiana, you want to talk about?
And food rescue and compost continues to go well.
Yep. All right, next is land protection.
Yes, so a few things to report back on. First is Conservation Commission has set up its Trail Stewards program, launched that, asked for our assistance in recruiting volunteers. This was something we had been talking about in Land Use Subcommittee as trying to possibly do it out of ESC, but it makes more sense for Conservation Commission to do it, so they went through their approval process. It's great. So you should have all just gotten an email about that yourselves, because everybody on this meeting is on the ESC announce list, or everybody but Robin. I'm sorry, didn't mean to. So we should check and make sure you're on that announce list. That announce list is just the email analog to what we've been doing on social media, and people who have said that they want to get emails from us. We've been using that. We don't put everything out there, but just some things. So the general idea there is that folks can sign up as a trail steward with the town, kind of have a title and agree to spend a certain amount of time helping to maintain and clean the trails. So a great volunteer opportunity, hopefully a great way to get people out there and not just increase the quality of the trails, but also increase awareness of things. So I'm excited that that is to the point where we can now recruit. And thanks in advance to Dan and Tiana for the things they're about to do to help promote that as well. So that was one thing. Another thing
It
is
may be a good idea for Earth Day event.
to recruit or to engage the folks who've already volunteered, just or to have some sort of organized.
To have an organized trail maintenance event.
Oh yeah, we could suggest something like that, and maybe and also that might, if people do that, then they might want to join. The idea here with the trail steward thing is more that you kind of commit to a certain number of hours, and that you do it on your own time. But like that, by having a title, that'll incentivize people to do it, you know, and a way of giving people a sense of belonging and commitment to it. So I plan to do
Or
it.
it could be like we could do like kind of like an introduction like event of like, you know, to get people interested in coming and learning about it. And
Yeah, and yeah, we should connect with Judy on that, since you know, she's gonna ultimately be organizing the or managing the volunteers. And that'll also, and again, that's through the commission, through the department, not the commission. The commission approved it. It's actually through the department, so it'll be as volunteers to a staffed office. So sorry,
the conservation department.
yeah. So,
Okay.
so really trying to so we're going to help support this, recruit people, but trying to really institutionalize and make sure that it has memory beyond just the folks who put it together. So which is really Judy being the force behind that. So next thing, open space recreation plan, and the group that's been put together to look at that, support that, help get that through. I'm the ESC's representative on that. It's been crickets for months. And then 2 weeks ago, we got an email with some materials to review. Basically, the starting point is some things out of the 2005, 2010, 2005 to 2010 plan that was finalized back in 2005, discussing what to update there, et cetera. So I won't forward those materials because they're just pulled out of the previous plan, but the idea is to pick some of those to update, particularly the town resource inventory list, the walking trails map that's in that. I believe we had circulated a copy of the whole document a few months ago, and so if people have interest in that, want to take a look, send me thoughts. I'm happy to pass those along, but otherwise this group is going to be trying to suggest updates to that. The next open space recreation plan committee meeting will be on March 15th, next week, 6:30 p.m. So anyone can view that, is my understanding. And then that's, as I mentioned before, that process is being heavily supported through consultancy out of Rhode Island that's doing that. So I think it'll be much more lively now. But you know, this is the first real thing that has happened with the committee since last fall. Any questions or comments on that? Or I don't know, Julie, if you have any eyes on that process at all, have heard anything else, but.
No, I really haven't. It's good to hear it's moving.
Yeah, it seems to be moving now, and my understanding is the general timeline hasn't changed. I just think that more of the work's happening now. And just pulling up my notes, we did have a subcommittee meeting back in February, on February 15th. Most of that was a lot of public participation about the VOC. So we politely listened, passed along materials to the ESC email, that things that we were asked to share. I can summarize some of the feedback, but I think it's things that people are probably familiar with at this point. And so that was a fair amount of the discussion. We had some discussion afterwards on the feedback provided. Also talked briefly, just was really kind of updates on Energy Park. And Tom, I don't know if there's anything else you want to say there. And just some of the other things that we've been talking about, keeping our eyes on issue with the Maple Way lot, and also the Butler Avenue property that I believe we chatted a bit about before. Myra's mentioned she has a lot of interest in that. I think she's mentioned that in this group, the larger group here, as well as in the small group.
What is the what were kind of the issues with the Maple Way?
I guess that I'm just going from my notes here. I'm not making an argument either way. The concern is that there's not really any protections in place for the Maple Way lot, is what I had in my notes. Julie, do you remember more of that conversation?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what it is, you know, if the trees are planted in Maple Way, what's to guarantee them staying there and not being torn down for development? So could that land be put in conservation is really what their preference would be.
Thank you for your I used up all my note-taking abilities, taking better notes on the public feedback, and so my notes towards the end of our discussion were a little sketchier than normal. So thanks.
Yeah, and that would fall to the town and not Gas and Light, because it's not that land is actually, the Maple Way is actually owned by the town.
And I've told them, I've been on Concom meetings saying, you know, if there's a town meeting coming up, if they want it in conservation, nobody to stop just trying to get the town to vote for that. That's why we have town meeting. So I don't think it's a yes or no question. Somebody just has to kind of bring it to the audience that makes the decision. I don't think any one person can make that a decision, I guess is what I'm saying.
I don't have anything else to share from that.
Okay, thank you. And as far as the ESC list, I guess probably have to pass that on.
So because it's on a Tufts server, I think it still needs a Tufts person to be a co-owner, but I already had made a few of you managers. I know Dan added some names to it, right? Dan, you were able to go in there and add some names at some point?
Yes, that's correct, but I'm still not getting.
Oh, I will make sure. It's possible you were added as an owner and not as a recipient. So I will double check that as well. I'm happy to help with anything that comes up with that as well. So you need to be listed as a moderator for an address to send things out. And then, so yeah, this is actually, well, it's not for my report, it's more for the community education report, but
Sorry.
I'm happy to add anyone to that list. And I know we had discussed that everything needs to go through the ESC email account, and you had at one point arranged that I could access that. I didn't want to go in and be messing with things you did. So what my compromise, and some of you who are more in the know can tell me if it's been a bad one, is that anything that I've sent from my address instead of from the ESC address, I've sent to the ESC address as well, so that everything is being archived in the town's ESC email address, so that if there ever was a Freedom of Information request, the materials would be archived there. So they're also archived on the Tufts server, but obviously that doesn't help anyone comply with the town's obligations for information requests. So so that's been my compromise. If anyone else does have the ability to send things out to the list, we should keep in mind that we need to CC the ESC town account as well, so that things are on record.
Got it.
But so
Okay.
thanks for raising that. Yeah, and Dan, I will double check and make sure that you're in both. And Robin, you're also not getting those emails. It's also possible that if you have tight spam filters, that, you know, because it is coming from a listserv address. So, but I will double check both of yours.
Yeah, does anyone else have Google that is receiving it? Is it a
I'm
Google?
getting it.
Oh, okay. I'll check those miscellaneous folders that exist that maybe.
I'll double, and it
Robin-
could also be that something was wrong or there was a typo, but I'll double check that.
All right, thank you. Building efficiency, anything, Robin?
Well, Saturday's the big day. Everybody
Mhm.
either go to town hall tomorrow. I think she'll still have people, you can vote. If
Till
not
12:30.
Saturday. Yeah, and then to the Galvin for the high school projects funding agreement. And then depending on what happens, if it passes, then the design team moves into design development and will refine everything, design systems and so forth. So and then from the Voc, I think it was last month, we had a public member that asked for people to go onto the state website to see their interest on a petition for reconsideration of MIPA evaluation. That closed on Friday. That public, you can't see if anyone else spoke up on it if you do submit. So I have no idea what is the status there, but the project requested a continuance to not attend this week's Concom. So they're still in permitting. And they're going up to ZBA later this month. So construction fences have shown up, but permits are not in hand. And then I don't know.
It just on that topic, I know that also there was and I'm trying to pull up there's an NEMT school committee meeting tonight that was at 7, and I know that
yeah,
there
their
was a lot
agenda
of-
was a normal one. It wasn't the building committee though.
it was, but
I'm sure they went
there's
for public.
there's a public push on change.org, and that last time I checked was over 5,000 signatures, so who knows where it is now. So there was a big push over that to just get people to turn out tonight.
Yeah.
So curious to see. So yes, it's not the building committee, but I think they wanted to pack the room.
I saw that and I thought the same thing, that's maybe where folks that are interested in us are tonight.
It's
Another building thing that we haven't talked about recently, but that I went out and did, Julie knows this. So I attended a capital planning meeting last week, I think it was, to understand their process and criteria for moving request of capital funds. That's not the right ways. It has to go to town meeting as a capital project. We vote in pieces or whatever. And I wanted to see, what are they using as criteria? I didn't get a quite answer on that, but Joe Conway from DPW was on it, and he said that when he makes his list, he is looking at the greenhouse gases and take that into account and efficiencies of the building. So that department is thinking about the MVP, I guess, indirectly. It's not like he's going through the checklist, but he does keep that on mind. So don't know if others, other departments do the same. So, and I have not followed up with Joe Ann because I said I would at the meeting of getting his details, because they didn't appreciate me asking too many questions. Not Joe, the other committee members. So that's that. If anyone has any questions.
Okay, thank you. Next is volunteers. Dan?
Yes, okay, so we've had out of the 18 or so that have initially indicated that they wanted to be volunteers. I have had 2 responses, actually 3 responses. One is from Judy Richards, who lives in Saugus. So although she can be a volunteer, I have not followed up with that yet. Alexandria Juarez is actively participating at this point in time. Has she contacted you, Melissa?
Yeah, I got an email from her and Peggy.
Okay, you did get one from Peggy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, because I haven't heard back from her, just saying that, yeah, so both her, Alexandria, and Peggy are volunteers. As far as I'm concerned, I passed them over to the subcommittee leads for more information and for assignment of duties.
Yeah, so Alexandria and Peggy are hopefully going to help out with food rescue pickup and drop off for the schools, and maybe help us out on the April 8th event.
Right, now that Sean has, I had sent you some, I think I sent you saying that there were volunteers, did I not? Available?
Sorry, Dan, I don't think I don't think so.
Okay,
I was CC'd on 2 replies that you sent back to people, but that's
Right.
all I think I have.
Yeah, so they actually I was kind of waiting for a confirmation as to what you really needed, which I don't think I had at that point in time. Okay. So in any case, Melissa, I don't know if you need both volunteers or whether it makes sense to split them at this point in time. And I'm going to kind of leave that up to you two. As to you can talk about priorities that you have, and how you could best share. The other thing is, it doesn't necessarily mean that they have to be on just one subcommittee. They can be on multiple subcommittees as well. So again, I'm leaving that up to the leads at this point in time. I don't want to get in the middle of this because, you give me information, I give it to them. They give me information, I give it to you. I don't want to be the middleman in this. And I think it's better if you both directly deal with each other as well as with the volunteers to define what needs to happen at that point in time.
All right.
Now, so I emailed Sherry about the email addresses for the past people that have submitted to positions in the ESC, but I have not received anything back from her yet. I also have all of the previous student liaisons, as well as applicants for new student liaisons that, and Melissa, I sent you a while back a modified information letter, similar to what I set out to the volunteers. You did not get back to me at that point in time. I'll resend that today.
I think I said to go ahead.
Okay, yeah, I guess I missed that then. So if it's okay, then I'll go ahead and I'll send out those as well.
Yeah.
All the other volunteers, that's prospective volunteers, I have not heard back from. And I've sent them follow-up emails as well. Part of the problem is that, we spent a lot of time going back and forth as to, how this should be and how it should be up on the website and all of that type of stuff. And it was really about a 4-month delay, even more in some cases, before I was able to send anything out to these volunteers. And it's always better to strike the iron when it's hot. So I think that, in the upcoming events that we have, once we get these volunteers, we can now react immediately. And while they are still interested and still understand that, they were interested, I think we'll have a better chance of getting even more volunteers at this, going forward. Now, I do
Yeah.
have a question not relating to volunteers, and that, by the way, that's all I have for the volunteers. I've had a lot of problems with computers tonight, so that's why I was late and so forth. But I understand there was a meeting point about open positions or the upcoming ESC.
Yep.
What happened with that?
Oh, I was just talking about how many seats we have, who's applied. I named that you applied. And so we basically have 3 applicants and 3 seats. So I was going to send around the
Okay.
applications for everybody to look at.
So I want to just let you know that I'm going to be selling the house in Wakefield and moving to New Hampshire, probably by the end of the year. And so my recommendation would be, I mean, I'm certainly willing to stay on until then, but my recommendation would be if you do have enough people to fill my position, to fill it at this point in time so that they can get on board and I can transfer things to them and so forth and so on. And they will have the full term. Instead
Okay, I mean, the other,
of at the end of the year saying I'm leaving and then you have an open position for one thing.
yeah. The other option is for you to take the end of Myra's term, which is a year. So that would be until April 2024.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to let you know. So
Yeah.
At the point at which you're not a resident, I don't think you can be on the committee. You can own 2 residents and not be in Wakefield and be on the committee. Because that distinction has been used as long as you're not the chair. So
Okay.
I don't know what that means to the timetable, but
Yeah, I mean, it would be.
that's sad, Dan, that you're leaving.
yeah, you know, it's that there's a lot of things that have come up over the past year and so forth and so on. And I really enjoyed, and I still enjoy, doing things and so forth. But I don't want to. I'm looking forward. What I'm saying is I'm looking for what's best for the ESC. And I think that if this at this point in time where we are putting in new people into the new positions and stuff like that, does it make sense to have that person on board as a board member? And then I can just transfer all the stuff over then. And then because the learning curve on this is really 2 years. I mean, it was about 2 years before I understood what everything was going on here. And before I could, understand what my role would be and where I would be most effective and stuff like that. That was my only concern. And certainly, I would be available for, anything that, and I could be a volunteer as well. I could be a remote volunteer, and so, that's some other things that could happen.
If we don't fill all of the open seats, do we just advertise again and do a special timing one?
Yeah.
Okay, well, thanks for letting us know, Dan.
Okay. So that's all I had for the volunteer stuff.
Okay, thanks. So next up is greenhouse gas inventory. Chris, I can share the presentation if you want.
Sure, thanks. So yeah, Melissa and I have been working on this. So tonight we just wanted to kind of, we're at a point where we've sort of done a draft inventory, and so we have some, draft results to share and talk a little bit about, what the process was like, what we're seeing, and kind of what other ideas and discussion it might prompt among the committee here. So just have just a few slides. We'll keep it brief. So yeah, just a quick overview of the process. We'll just do, just a couple of slides on sort of a summary of what's in the baseline of our town's emissions, and then some of our thoughts on key takeaways, and we can kind of have a discussion on what potential next steps might be. So, and feel free to add at any point to Melissa, but the process that we use, so think we'd shared before, but there's the Metropolitan Area Planning Council, MAPC, has what they call a community GHG inventory tool. This was developed in collaboration with a couple of towns, I believe, Natick and Melrose. So it's just an Excel tool, and has a guide, user guide to instruct how to draw on information that you have available that's town specific, but also these other MAPC data sets that have different kinds of data for towns all across the state. And as an example, for vehicular, on-road emissions, there's information which presumably is kind of like from the RMV about where vehicles are registered and what type of vehicles they are and mileage and things like that. So there's some town specific information that goes in, but there's also this kind of like extrapolated data that gets pulled from various times, and there's ways to kind of manipulate that into estimates of what we can sort of ascribe to our town's emissions. And this is town-wide, so it looks a little bit at like municipal town operations, but also is meant to really capture everything going on in the whole town. We did talk about using, we did use fiscal year 21 as a baseline period, but because of the availability of some of that data, it's not necessarily like, it's not always data that is specific to that exact 12-month period. So that was just one of the things we kind of learned as we went through it. And we might not necessarily be doing this every year, but we just thought it was a good place to start. So there's our number, 193,000. Again, a lot of things were kind of estimated here. It's always a little abstract to just see, I think, a large number with no other real context. But one of the things we talked about maybe doing a little more of with some of this information was benchmarking that by pulling information from some other towns and just sort of getting a little better context of where that stands. That's actually almost remarkably close to what the town of Melrose has as a published estimate of their own town emissions. They were like 180 something as of 2017 source that I found from their website, and they were like 7 metric tons CO2 equivalent per capita. So actually very close in terms of total and pretty close in terms of per capita numbers, just to give one little bit of context there. So this first pie chart or donut chart here with the breakdown is just simply 3 sectors. So stationary energy, which is basically buildings, transportation, and then waste. And then we'll, on the next couple slides, there's a little bit more of a breakdown.
Yeah, so this these categories are, and the breakdown are pretty in line with statewide emissions as well. So not really surprising.
So this breaks that down a little bit further. For example, on kind of the right-hand side, the big orange piece is residential buildings, and then toward the bottom, the gray portion is commercial industrial buildings. So as a standalone sort of subcategory, that on-road, 43% for on-road transportation, so cars, trucks, and things like that, it's the largest sort of single category. But if you combine residential and C&I buildings, they actually become the largest combined subcategory. So, again, pretty in line with what one might expect and kind of like statewide trends. So, but it just kind of puts a few of these things kind of in relative perspective. So let's see, I guess on the left, this is the building energy emissions by source. So Melissa and I kind of noted and commented on the fact that between fuel, oil, electricity, and natural gas, it's actually kind of striking how seemingly even those break down into almost thirds. And also just that fuel oil, is a pretty big chunk, more than one might think. And I mean, just kind of for me, anecdotally, I see, oil trucks going up and down the street all the time. So we don't know specifically how that kind of compares to other municipalities, but it feels like just kind of heuristically feels like a pretty high proportion. That is also something that's very hard to track. So I think, you know, it's an estimate for how much emissions are associated with fuel oil, but that's definitely an area where the data that we have is, you know, very squishy, I would say.
Chris, one of the things that we've have asked the utility as we get, you know, and this is, as you say, it's very hard and squishy to track this type of stuff. But for example, when we get a rebate application for, say, a heat pump, one of the metrics that we're starting to ask to be collected is what fuel type are you currently on, and is it a full or partial conversion, right? So if, you know, if you were on oil and then fully convert over to heat pump, then we know, you know, that shifts from fuel oil specifically, and, you know, then expands the electrical chart pie wedge. So I don't know if you were able to grab that from the utility. It's pretty minimal at this point, but
so this pie isn't the percent of households using those fuel sources. This is the outcome of emissions, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Do we know
Yep, that's the emissions related breakdown of those three energy fuels.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Tom, that was, you know, as we went through this process, one of the things we thought about, we kind of looked at, all right, how are these estimates, you know, how do they actually relate to what's really going on in the town, sort of specifically? And I think that was what you just mentioned was an area where we thought that might be sort of an interesting way to kind of cross check or just provide some other data input to the estimate of you know, how hopefully how homes continue to get upgraded from oil to electric heat pumps.
So Tom, you said that's a new thing that's going to be added to the application, or has it been added, or?
it has been added, but, you know, it isn't going to make an impact. You know, you're talking dozens of you know, it's and I don't know where, you know, outside of going and looking at I don't know, permitting or the assessor's office, I don't know how well they track, you know, what our inventory of what a home uses. I know like MLS does, but, you know, how accurate is that? Like,
Yeah, so this data is from MAPC, and I believe it's from the census originally.
Okay.
Yeah, Melissa, did we end up getting right? We wound up getting a percentage.
We got some data from the utility, but it was assumed in that data that anything that was not natural gas was fuel oil. And actually what we found through this census data is that there's actually a lot of residential electricity and commercial electricity. So I guess, you know, it's a little bit more granular, but, you know, I'm sure there's still some issues with it.
Right. But I mean, just as an example of how kind of roundabout some of these estimates are, I mean, it starts off with, you know, an estimated percentage of how many homes are heated with oil, and then applies that to an estimated breakdown of different types of households like multifamily, single family, detached, and so on. And then so it applies that percentage uniformly across those categories, then uses different estimates of how many gallons of oil does a typical home like this in this part of the country use every year. So it's obviously not something we're measuring. So I like the idea of trying to find other sources of information that you suggested, Tom, about what's the rate of adoption of homes, you know, converting from oil to heat pump, and sort of track that, you know, over the years, or however often we choose to do this exercise. So yeah, there we go. I guess, was there one more? Was there? Yeah, this one just had the municipal emission disaggregated. I mean, I think the takeaway is just that, you know, the town's own operations themselves are, you know, small compared to everything else that's going on, but we do have, through green communities and mass energy insights and stuff, we have some data about what the town's doing. So we have the option to track that as a subset. So yeah, I think you can go to the next one, Melissa. So, you know, the key takeaways were, you know, we think about everything that's going on in the town, obviously this committee and the town, and there's only so much that is under direct control. So we were sort of just thinking about, you know, what are the forms of sort of influence that we can think about, as opposed to just directly control under our own operations. Oil, again, we just sort of talked about that, but it felt like a big category, and to think about further helping those transitions and communicating about what incentives are available, or, you know, revisiting what kinds of incentives there could be to help encourage that. Commercial industrial buildings, you know, I think it was about a third of the building energy usage, so that's, you know, significant, not just purely residential. And same with EVs. You know, that one was a surprise to me to see that as its own category. It was the largest, and yeah, anything that we can do to think about promoting more electric vehicle use would help. So those were just some of our kind of initial reactions, and so I wanted to share what we found and see what else, talk a little bit about what else we can do with this. You know, now that we have some of this information, you know, do we want to publish it in some way? Do we want to share it? You know, what would that look like? How would we do that? And what else can we do with this information? So,
Chris, I have a question on the vehicle use. Is that based on, I think you said that was based on the number of registered vehicles. So does that in any way factor in, you know, that we have a train, that we have a bus line as infrequently as it runs? Like if we move to other, you know, if we get a loop shuttle or something when the new, you know, top of the lake shows up, if that's already factored in
Do we
to
have public transportation?
reducing the vehicles.
Well, yeah,
yes.
no, it's not subtracting, if that's what you're
Mhm.
asking.
Right, like because it's based on how many vehicles are registered, there's an assumption of like every registered vehicle does X miles per year.
Yeah.
Right. And same with public transportation, it's, you know, there's the way the math worked out, it's like, you know, say the commuter rail, there's some number of, you know, total miles traveled, and so the diesel associated with our town's route is like, you know, 0.02% of the entire MBTA's diesel use. So you know, so the things like, okay, if we do something to encourage people to, you know, use a shuttle or you know, use public transportation, is it going to actually show up in this? Probably not, you know, because of the way the data is collected. But I think this just sort of helps get us thinking about what our categories are and what we can do, and maybe other metrics, better metrics that we want to start thinking about tracking. Keep an eye on
Wasn't
what
there
the
something in the model to add something like a local transport?
like a RTA, like a regional
Yeah,
transport?
yeah.
Yeah, that if we had one that we could put information specific to that in, and it would be a part of the on-road piece of it. Yeah.
But again, like the assumption of, you know, how many miles, you know, the average person drives is not really going to change. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know how they kind of, when they update that, you know, how they update that.
Yeah.
But it would show if
Like
fewer cars were on the road registered,
even
right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I would assume as they're updating, they, you know, and I have no idea where they're pulling their data, but, you know, if they're starting to track registered vehicle categories, and one of those categories being, you know, EV.
Yeah, that's definitely one.
number of those go up, maybe the vehicle CO2 impact goes down, or shifts into, it starts to shift that into the electricity bucket, and then as they're tracking the electricity generation and where that's coming from, so it's all interlinked and complex.
Yeah.
But this is, I think, personally, I think this is great, and it's going to be a really good tool. And even going to the slide of, where do we use this information, right? This one, no, one back. Here, right? Just what we were talking about, like how using this data to support the specialized opt-in code, because those are places that, that there is influence through code and policy, and without that, right, today, even with the multifamily moratorium for natural gas, there's nothing someone could certainly build a multi-family unit and put oil in.
Yeah.
There's no, right, like we're just saying, because of the gas system constraints, we can't take on new large load. There's nothing to say that from a carbon output that someone couldn't install, oil or propane.
And I think a lot of people are doing that.
So
This is amazing. This is a great report. Like, we definitely need to publish it and somehow use it as a benchmark. I think that we present it to the town council when we meet with them on the 27th. I think they'll be really interested in this. And I agree with you completely, Tom. I think that this supports the specialized opt-in.
Yeah.
I actually said, just thinking about this, right? This gets presented first, then we go move into the specialized. Is it as simple as publishing this on the ESC page, this presentation in the ESC page, so that it can be easily referenced?
Could we do a webinar on it during Earth Month? I think people would be really interested in this. I don't know that that's too hard to get together, but
maybe Julie can ask around maybe presenting this in conjunction with Gas and Light, right? Gas and Light does several webinars during the year. That this could be a subsection of one of those webinars where it makes sense.
Yeah. I just don't I don't want this to get put on a shelf somewhere. Like, this is really important stuff. And we've never had anything near this. So, and I know it's not perfect. I mean, none of these are perfect, but they're a really important start.
Yeah, so I mean, it could be a basis for creating a climate change plan, which other towns have done using this data, like Melrose. Obviously we would need a consultant to probably do that, and somebody to manage them. So, there's that whole staffing issue. And we can have webinars. We could publish it obviously on our website. We just kind of want to, we don't want to put it on the shelf. We want to figure out how we can use it and actually, do some initiatives that will, reduce this baseline.
Yeah, and I would even say this would be really good for grant writing, right? Like you now have the data, depending on what the grant wants or is looking for, but you have the baseline and what you're trying to achieve.
Yeah, I mean, I know at the Safe Streets Working Group meeting a couple of weeks ago, Aaron Kokinda was there talking about an RTA. So talking about doing grants. So I mean, this would support that. This could go right into those grants. So Anne, I don't know, you're probably the only one in town government right now that knows that this is out there. So think about how we can share this with the people who are grant writing and who need this kind of baseline information.
Yeah, absolutely. Great information.
It's amazing information.
I'll pass.
I think
it on.
maybe, Melissa, I think maybe you just do a memo and attach this and like send it to Steve and ask him to circulate it as a start.
Okay,
And tell and say to him, we're trying to figure out what to do with this. We hope it'll be useful for things, you know, we'll take everybody's ideas.
okay,
Copy Maureen on it too, to the chair of town council.
okay.
I would also just on that CC all of the ESC liaisons to the other boards, right? Myself included, the school committee potentially is, you know, I think it's valuable across, you know, that's why the liaisons we exist.
Okay.
One other thing we talked about, probably like a next step with this would be possibly a little bit more of a detailed report, just sort of explaining a little more on the methodology, because I'm sure there'll be lots of questions, and there's a bit of nuance to the way some of it, you know, the assumptions that need to be made to kind of come up with this. So I think it's just for the sake of, you know, documenting that and getting it out. We've been thinking about sort of putting a little bit more of a methodology report together, and can you know, continue that work with the subcommittee, but glad that this is a good sort of first communication.
Yeah, I think that'd be great. I think it'd be really interesting to be able to dig in a little more on like, well, where did some of these assumptions come from, or where did the data come from?
Yeah.
That underpins it. That's awesome. And do you have, you mentioned the Melrose one that's very similar. Do you have, or could you send around if other towns have done these, if they have like high level stats that, you know, would be interesting to compare, like where we are in relation to some of our neighbors?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the towns did this like 10 years ago, so
Yeah.
not really apples to apples, but yeah, I think Melrose's was based on like early 2000s data or something like that.
Is
But they
yeah. PC collecting this and aggregating it? I mean, that may be a place to go ask where other, you know, if as communities do this, are they submitting their findings and results to the MAPC?
Yeah,
I don't know. I don't think that's like a requirement, but we could ask them if they have data from other towns. Because this tool is just kind of like out there, like anybody can use it.
But yeah, that's a good point. They may have some just from, like, you know, we contacted them with some questions and stuff, so they, you know, just through their network of towns that they've worked with and supported, they may have some comparative information that they could share, or point us to who to talk to.
So yeah, that's it. So yeah, I will definitely send it to Steve, and yeah, look to present it to town council at the end of the month, along with all the other stuff we talked about. All right. Green communities. Julie.
My notes. We met with DPW, who kind of takes the lead on capital budgets, and Steve and Jen Calais on the 14th of February. And basically what we did is we went through, I don't know that you all recall, but we did a very in-depth energy kind of baseline. And there really were already projects prioritized in there, and we had looked at them over kind of the 5-year period that we have to reduce our energy consumption. And so what seems to be workable, given the amount of money that we have, is doing the Dolbear HVAC units, and some lighting. So basically doing some Dolbear. They have some end of life things there just based on the age of the building. So that will probably be where the bulk of the money will go to. And then there are some small items at Town Hall and the Americow. And then the thinking is next year, there's going to be some Woodville actually needs a lot of kind of mechanical upgrades next year. And we're hoping that with the IRA plus the green communities, we can do heat pumps there in the next year. So got this year pretty well set. I think I checked in with Steve today. The actual grant application is due around the 20th of March. And Joe Conway at DPW is just finalizing some of the numbers and the bids. So that's how we're gonna do that, at least apply for the grant, which is the next step. That's my report.
And so do we have some money right now?
We received can't remember the number off the top of my head. I know that we were guaranteed 70,000. Your first year you're in, everybody gets 70,000. We ended up getting about 120,000. So yeah, so it's going to cover more than we thought, which is great. So between that and then I really think we'll be able to do Woodville next year. And Anne, I don't know whether you know more about all this than I do, but I think we're hoping we'll do Dolbear next year. Oh, that was the other thing. Tim from schools facilities was on as well. And then of course with the high school, fingers crossed, everybody vote on Saturday. I think we'll be on a really good track to get our energy reductions. And we'll just keep going after the money. They're looking at the green communities. I think there's going to be some other, the baseline will stay the same, but there's going to be some other opportunities as well for green communities.
Great.
Thanks.
Thank you. Education.
Yeah, not too much this month. We did a follow-up email to the folks who had attended the recycle event, sharing out some information. Thinking about doing a follow-on event of a field trip to the recycling facility. Gretchen Carey had offered, and that sounds mighty cool. And then also looking at other topics that we could do another similar event on in the next couple of months. Maybe something could be in the Earth Day timeframe if someone has a topic that they're excited for. I'm happy to try to set something up if there's a topic. Just let us know. Otherwise, I've just been continuing to post things that everyone sends and shares, and all sorts of good tips. A lot of engagement about the rain barrel sale. People are real excited about rain barrels. In fact, Anne, can non-Wakefield residents buy a rain barrel through this program?
Sure.
Okay. Yeah.
Sure.
Acquiring minds on Facebook want to know. Yeah, so we've just been, continuing to share stuff. We're trying to get William set up to start an Instagram account for us. I'm not sure if that actually got off the ground yet. But we'll then be dual social platform in addition to the email list. I think that's about it. So keep sending stuff as your subcommittees are, have things you want to promote or engage on. If we post the GHG inventory on our site, we should absolutely publicize that. Any of that stuff. Just let me know.
Yeah, I mean, I think as part of the initiative associated with that, we want to definitely focus on education.
Yeah. What does all this mean? What do we do about it?
Yeah.
So, yep.
Thank you. All right. Updates from the groups, student members. Do you have anything to update us with?
Yes, I actually do.
Okay.
So I remember, Melissa, you mentioned something about starting up a green team at the school. And I talked to one of the environmental teachers at the school, and they'd be more than willing to be the head of it, and we can try and get that started.
That's awesome.
That's great.
If you want to, put me in contact or set something up, let me know.
Okay, I will.
William, I heard that they're recycling again at the high school. Is that true?
Yeah, we've been doing a bit of recycling at the moment, but and there's been more numbers than previously, so that's nice.
Good. Glad to hear it. All right, no school committee. Anne, any updates?
Not too much. Today though, two people inquired about if we were gonna have a home composter sale this year. So I guess we are, and I will get working on that next week, and I will get some information out to you.
Awesome. All right, Julie.
I don't think there's a whole lot from town council. There hasn't been a lot of environmental things. I am the representative on the 40A committee that we were talking about earlier, which I do think has environmental impacts and benefits. So I'll be happy to keep everybody up to date on that.
Yeah, I think Robin, aren't you the liaison for us?
I am.
Oh, good. I forgot that we put a liaison. Oh, good. So Robin will serve together.
They haven't answered the question on time yet.
Yeah, I've been so busy, I haven't even seen it, but yeah, I'm excited to be a part of that. I think there's some real opportunities in this. So good.
Okay, last but not least, Tom. You're on mute.
I am on mute. All right. Not a lot of updates. The community solar, which has been delayed due to just a bunch of different factors. The contractor is working on the final design, so the bid was accepted. The design work is happening. So stay tuned on when that comes online, and then we'll have the ability for folks will have the ability to sign up for community solar. Don't quite know what that mechanic looks like yet, but it is coming.
Is the utility still pushing like that green choice?
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, maybe Tiana, that's something to, there's 95 customers signed up. Yes, 95. I'd love to see that push over 100 or more.
Should we aim for 120 by Earth Day?
Yeah, that could be like,
Sure.
this is your Earth Day activity or your Earth Day.
Good call. I totally kind of, I put it in place, and it does get promoted. It's when a new customer signs up, it's actually, it's a checkbox with a link to explain about it. It's, the utility pushes it out every once in a while, but I think actually for an Earth Day, that's a great thing to do, right? If you're concerned about your carbon footprint and your greenhouse gas emissions from your electric consumption, you can offset that by 100% by simply subscribing to the green rate. And I can go in conjunction with the greenhouse gas inventory. But that's all of my updates from Gas and Light. It's been.
Can we do a similar challenge on compost? And do we have any compost bins left?
So compost bins for,
The Black Earth stuff.
oh yeah, we probably have probably 20 or so left.
Maybe that's another challenge for the month.
Yeah, get us to the 500 where we've dropped a bit. So there's been some unsubscriptions. So I'm looking at it now, it's 422. I think we're.
So usually during the winter, a lot of people slow down during the winter, and then it will kick back up come April, May. When I had talked to Connor a couple weeks ago at Black Earth, and he had said, don't worry, it always dips and then it will go back up.
I feel like this summer it was 417. I definitely remember some 14s numbers in recent months. So if anything, 420 sounds like a slight uptick.
So we usually add at least 1 or 2 a week.
Wow.
So if we hit the pricing threshold, but then drop below, does it revert or
Bounce back and forth.
do they give you a little grace period there?
Yeah, a little.
I mean, the other thing is people would start
500
to
is
think
the
about
threshold, right?
compost in the spring because, you know, they're gonna get their soil and with the community garden
Yeah,
going on.
yeah, we're gonna try to get some compost for the school gardens. All right, so our next meeting is April.
Oh, sorry, Tom, did you have any updates on the energy park thing? Did I space out and miss that?
No, so the energy park is at the state level right now, and with the Office of Energy. They are working on some of the contracting stuff for the parts and pieces, but it's not the Article 97 transfer of land is not finalized yet. We've got to make it through at the state level. The state has actually asked us, they're all in support. This, unfortunately, we hit the transition of the administration and the office. They are converting to a new online submission system, and they would like us to be the first ones to submit online. And for the past 4 weeks, it's been next week. So they're not penalizing us for any of that, but they're just, you know, we're waiting for that to come online. But the process
I just recall there was like a tight time window for we need to get approved and
yes,
get stuff.
That all still exists. Some of the stuff is potentially being ordered because we would use it somewhere else. And then there's also spots where we make a contract. So for example, I think say the generator, we can contract for, because you contract for a position on the manufacturing line. And so there, you know, if we can contract for that position and have no penalty to withdraw, you know, if someone else can take the spot, we can do that. Or we might cite it somewhere else for another use if it does, you know, the energy park falls apart, which hopefully it does not. But so it's kind of heads down and working those parts.
So Tom, does this mean that Concom did its sign approval?
No, they have not. We have asked for a vote and they have not. They have declined to vote. And we have, as of right now, we're waiting for them to invite us back, and they have not.
All right.
Is there a point at which, I mean, we already approved this statement in support of, but like that we can help get Concom? Is Concom hoping that it just evaporates based on the folk stuff, or what? Like, what's the?
I don't, you know, I can't comment on that. We are, like I said, under advisement from town legal counsel and utility legal counsel have filed with the state. We actually consulted with the state, and the state actually asked us to file. The state in themselves are very excited about the project, are very supportive of the project. It meets the state goals that the state, you know, the net zero 2050 goals. It is in alignment of all the things that the state wants to do. So they've asked us to go forth and submit. The only like I said, the only reason why it isn't officially submitted into their review process is they want us to put it in their electronic portal, which they keep delaying.
So Concom approval isn't holding up submitting it to the state, but Concom not approving it would ultimately stop it from being built.
Not necessarily.
Oh, okay.
It's not a require. It's a highly, in the policy that the state has, it is, they would like that, but it isn't an absolute, is my understanding.
Oh, okay, interesting.
And all of the stuff that has been presented in terms of the land, all of that would still exist. So, it would, the Burns Park, the conservation land on Farm Street, and the planting, the re-canopying of Maple Way would all proceed.
Alrighty, so our next meeting is April 13th.
Melissa, to that point, so as of right now, remote meetings expires at the end of this month.
I hear it's getting extended.
Yeah, so has anyone seen it risen? to that?
Sherry told me that it's getting extended to 2025.
Excellent.
But she assured me that the town hall is installing Zoom equipment so that we can at some point meet in person. I just don't know when.
No, the excitement is actually more for my day job than this meeting. I miss you guys, but
Yeah.
Okay, so there's confidence that after March 31st, it will extend. Great.
Yeah. Yes. So April 13th, next meeting. Hopefully that works for everybody. Any matters not anticipated?
Do we want to set a tentative hold for a extra special little meeting for the recycling bylaw?
Why don't we figure out which way we're going, and then we can do that over email.
Okay, sounds good.
Anything else? Great, motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second,
All right, Robin,
Yes.
Tom,
Yes.
Chris,
Yes.
Julie,
yes.
Dan,
Yes.
Sean,
Yes.
Ann,
Yes.
Tiana.
Yes.
Yes, all right, thanks, everybody. Have a great night.
Me too.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.